What's going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well. Man, I think I might be getting sick. I don't know. So hopefully this lesson goes well. Could be just really bad allergies. I don't know, but I didn't sleep too well last night. So hopefully this is my best work ever, but I'm not sure. So today we're going to start with the story. It's a short story, but remember, short is a relative term. So compared to a whole novel, this is a short story. But compared to something really short, it's kind of long. It's probably 50 pages. So I'm not sure how much of this we're going to read throughout the year. It might take us a couple months to read it, so we might skip around. But Flowers for Algernon, you can see right off the bat here, there's a mouse. So something to do with a mouse. Let me give you a little backstory. Okay. So Flowers for Algernon is a short story. How about this? It's an epistolary story. It's getting a little hot in here. And that is a story that is told through either diaries or letters, like to another person. So the main character, like the whole story is told through people writing a letter to somebody or a couple different people or through diary entries. And you can see at the bottom, Dracula, Frankenstein, those are two classics told in an epistolary way. We also have a modern series of books that you might know. I'll pause here just in case anybody knows. And that would, of course, be Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like the only story, the only way that story is told is through Greg's diary entries. So this is going to be somewhat similar. Our main character, Charlie, he is a man in his 30s or 40s, and he does have some issues when it comes to his mental ability. And that's a tricky subject because it's going to be okay. Let me just tell you this story here. Yesterday, okay, I was in Walmart gathering some things. I needed some food, and I had my shirt and tie on, if you remember from yesterday. And I walked past a man who was much older than I am, probably 60s, late 50s, and he was with another woman, um, much younger. May have been his daughter. I'm not sure. Probably not his daughter. Maybe a social worker or something. But the man looked to me like he might have Down syndrome. So I think he needed help with groceries. I don't think he could do the math on his own. But he saw me in my shirt and tie. He also had a shirt and tie on. He was very well dressed. And the smile on his face, he's like, hey, we match. I don't know if I've ever smiled that wide in my life. So, and we're talking about the 9 different personalities. So, what he lacks in, logical, mathematical, probably, less than a person, and I don't want to use the term normal, right? But a person without Down syndrome, maybe, would have. But when you talk about interpersonal, when you talk about happiness, he's a very charming man. My face lit up like, we had a connection. So when we get to the story about Charlie is his name, and this takes place probably in the 1960s, but it could take place at any time, not based on a true story. But Charlie has some mental disabilities in some ways, but in other ways, like he's very innocent. This I'll kind of warn you, this could be a kind of a tug at your heartstrings kind of thing. Because in some ways, like, not spoiling anything, but Charlie's kind of going to lose his innocence, I guess. And so I try really hard not to, obviously somebody with Down syndrome probably in most cases will not score as high on something called an IQ test. We've talked about before. They were really popular in the 70s and 80s. Now, not so popular because we realize they only really test one thing. So, or a couple things, but he doesn't do well on an IQ test. But when it comes to like engaging with people and overall happiness, like who am I to judge that because this person can't do math like most of us in this room can? That doesn't mean, I mean, and so we get into these big questions like, well, what's the purpose of life? I mean, if it's to simply be happy, probably you could say that somebody with Down syndrome is just as likely, if not more likely. Some people will stress out about things. So try to keep that in mind. I'm not sure if I'm doing a really good job of trying to explain, like, we measure a lot of times success based on intelligence, or a number of factors that might not be like, of course, hopefully most people know like the amount of money somebody has. Hopefully you're thinking like that doesn't necessarily make you a better person. So we're going to get into some of those deep questions, those existential questions we talked about, like what is the meaning of life? So let's start reading the one thing I forgot to mention. I started off talking about, it's called Flowers for Algernon, and there is a mouse called Algernon. That's the Algernon is the name of the mouse. Okay, so Charlie and the mouse. We've also talked about this very briefly. I can't remember. I think there was a reaction in one class like, "Oh my gosh, no! Does that happen?" So testing on animals. That's something common, right? Yeah, it was in one of our videos where mice or rats were just the part of their brain that kind of makes them happy or whatever, pleasure, I think they called it, would light up and they would continually like want that reinforcement. And I think I mentioned, I think in every class, like, well, that could be a similar reaction to like alcohol or, whatever, those kind of like vices, we might say, those things that trigger, your happiness for a little while. But then if you know anything about alcohol or drug use, it works probably for a little while and doesn't work so after a while and becomes very expensive. And then you're stealing your neighbor's TVs and stuff to try to pay for the habit. So if anybody was thinking about it, I would stay away from that. So yeah, I don't remember what I was saying for that, but something about rats. Oh, rats being, yeah. So Charlie and Algernon are going to share space and they're going to be treated very much the same way. So Charlie is definitely an experiment. All right, so let's make this bigger. We will start reading and you will see how Charlie writes. Background, I think we probably don't have to mention this because I've already talked about it right there. But you can see this first part. Like, remember, this is epistolary story. He's writing this in his diary, and I would say that he doesn't, he's not the best speller, but I don't think he has access to spell check. Excuse me. Again, this takes place in the 1960s. So, progress report 1, March 5th, 1965. Dr. Strauss says I should write down what I think and everything that happens to me from now on. I don't know why, but he says it's important. So they will see if they will use me. I hope they use me. Miss Kinnian says maybe they can make me smart. I want to be smart. My name is Charlie Gordon. I'm 37 years old, and 2 weeks ago was my birthday. I have nothing more to write now, so I will close for today. Oh my gosh, I just thought I'm 47 years old, and I think 1 week ago was my birthday, a little over a week ago. Oh. So obviously, if he's in 8th grade, I'd say, Charlie, buddy, got to do some work here on the spelling. You spell check. But in 1965, spell check didn't exist, so we'll give him a break. Progress report 2, March 6th. I had a test today. I think I failed it. And I think that maybe now they won't use me. What happened is a nice young man was in the room and he had some white cards with ink spilled all over them. Okay, so that is the test that we just watched the video on about the ink blots, how it's controversial. Does it work? Does it not? A lot of stuff with the brain is controversial, but he was given a Rorschach test. White cards all over them. He said, Charlie, what do you see on this card? I was very scared, even though I had my rabbit's foot in my pocket, because when I was a kid, I always failed tests in school. I spilled ink too. So maybe this was a time when pens needed to be filled with ink. And of course, probably school made him feel really dumb. I told him I saw an ink blot. He said yes. And it made me feel good. I thought that was all, but when I got up to go, he stopped me. He said, now sit down, Charlie. We're not through yet. Then I don't remember so good, but he wanted me to say what was in the ink. I didn't see nothing in the ink, but he said there was pictures there. Other pupils saw some pictures. I couldn't see any pictures. I really tried to see. I held the card close up, then far away. Then I said, if I had my glasses, I could see better. I usually only wear my glasses in the movies or TV, but I said they were in the closet in the hall. I got them. Then I said, let me see that card again. I bet I'll find it now. I tried hard, but I still couldn't find the pictures. I only saw the ink. I told him maybe I need new glasses. He wrote something down on a paper, and I got scared of failing the test. I told him it was a very nice ink blot with little points all around the edges. He looked very sad, so that wasn't it. I said, please, let me try again. I'll get it in a few minutes because I'm not so fast sometimes. I'm a slow reader too. Miss Kinneas's class for slow adults, but I'm trying very hard. He gave me a chance with another card that had two kinds of ink spilled on it, red and blue. He was very nice, and he talked slow, like Mrs. Kinnean does, and he explained it to me that it was a Rorschach. And you can see that little one right there, call that a footnote. So you go to the bottom of the page to see what that means, and you can see we know the test, right? Where were we though? Where were we? Right here. He said, pupils see things in the ink. I said, show me where. He said, think. I told him, I think an ink blot, but that wasn't right either. He said, what does it remind you? Pretend something. I closed my eyes for a long time to pretend. I told him I pretend a fountain pen with ink linking all over a tablecloth. Then he got up and went out. I don't think I passed the Rorschach test. All right, so that's probably enough for today. Not easy reading. Sorry, I don't think I messed up too badly, but just wanted to make sure, because sometimes Charlie, leaves out some words. I wanted to read it as true as possible. I think I added an of there. But if anybody has any questions or answers, we'll continue to read this. And again, I don't want to spoil anything. But you can see, like right now, Charlie's like very innocent. Like he's eager to please. He wants to do well, right? He's so used to doing poorly on tests. He's got a little test anxiety, so he's trying his best. I hope you enjoy the story, and I'll try to like get an idea when I go around, like, hey, are people enjoying this story? So it's too early to tell yet. We just started, but maybe in a week, we'll be going on vacation. But maybe when we come back from Thanksgiving break, we'll see, should we continue this or not? All right, adios, amigos.